Commander Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the UES Liberty with slow, careful steps. The massive view screen showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. 3 months had passed since they left Earth's solar system on what everyone called a routine patrol mission. The ship hummed quietly around him as 200 crew members went about their daily tasks. Jake stopped near the communications station where Lieutenant Amy Foster was monitoring deep space transmissions. She looked up at him with tired eyes. The patrol had been boring so far, which was exactly what Earth Command wanted. No surprises, no unexpected encounters, just a peaceful journey to the Outer Rim territories to show the flag and return home. Dr. Lisa Harper sat at her science station, running endless scans of nearby star systems. She was the ship's xenobiologist. Though she had never actually studied a living alien, humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel, and so far they had found nothing but empty worlds and ancient ruins. Lisa often wondered if they were alone in the universe. Chief Engineer Nick Coleman came up from the engine room, wiping grease from his hands with a dirty cloth. The Liberty was one of Earth's newest ships, but Nick treated her like she was his own child. He had served on cargo haulers and mining vessels before joining the Deep Space Fleet. His experience with keeping ships running in harsh conditions made him invaluable on long missions like this one. Captain Ryan Torres emerged from his ready room, carrying a steaming cup of coffee. He was a quiet man who had earned his command through years of service on various ships. Ryan believed in leading by example and never asked his crew to do anything he would not do himself. The crew respected him for this, and morale remained high even during the boring patrol. Amy suddenly straightened in her chair and put one hand to her earpiece. Her face changed from bored to alert in seconds. She began typing rapidly on her console, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Several other crew members noticed her sudden activity and turned to watch. Jake moved quickly to stand behind Amy's station. He could see data streaming across her screens, but most of it looked like random noise to him. Amy was the best communications officer in the fleet, and if something had caught her attention, it was probably important. "Commander, I'm picking up a transmission," Amy said without looking away from her screen. "It's definitely artificial, not natural phenomena. The signal is very weak and heavily distorted, but there's definitely a pattern here." Lisa immediately left her station and joined them. She looked over Amy's shoulder at the data scrolling down the screen. Her training in xenobiology included courses on potential alien communication methods. She had never expected to actually use that knowledge. "Can you clean it up?" Jake asked. His heart was beating faster now. First contact with an alien species was something every member of the Deep Space Fleet dreamed about, but also feared. No one knew what they might find out here in the darkness between stars. Amy's fingers danced over her controls. Slowly, the static began to clear. What emerged was definitely not human in origin. The signal had a strange musical quality that rose and fell in patterns unlike anything they had ever heard before. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "It's definitely intelligent," Lisa whispered. She was recording everything and running it through the ship's translation programs. "This is structured communication. There are repeated elements, emotional markers, and what might be mathematical concepts embedded in the transmission." Captain Torres joined the growing crowd around the communications station. His coffee sat forgotten on a nearby console as he listened to humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. The bridge had become completely silent except for the strange, haunting transmission coming through the speakers. "Can you determine where it's coming from?" Torres asked quietly. He was already thinking about protocols and procedures. Earth Command had detailed instructions for first contact situations, but those had always seemed like academic exercises. Now they were faced with the real thing. Nick had been quietly working at another station, using the ship's sensors to trace the signal's origin. He looked up with a grim expression. "Captain, The signal is coming from approximately 47 light-years away, but it's not aimed at us. We're just picking up scatter from a very powerful transmission that's being broadcast in multiple directions. The implications hit everyone immediately. This was not a greeting or an attempt at communication with humanity. This was something else entirely, something that made Jake's stomach tighten with worry. The alien transmission continued, its musical tones now seeming more desperate than beautiful. Lisa had been working frantically with the translation programs, feeding in everything they knew about mathematics, physics, and universal constants. Suddenly, her face went pale. She looked up at the others with fear in her eyes. "I've got partial translation," she said in a shaky voice. "It's a distress call. They're asking for help from anyone who can receive their transmission. They mentioned something called the Vex. And from what I can understand, these Vex are destroying their worlds." The bridge fell silent again. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. They had come out here looking for new life and new civilizations, but instead, they had stumbled into someone else's war. The alien voices continued their desperate plea, transmitted across the vast emptiness of space in hope that someone, anyone, would hear and respond. Torres made his decision quickly. "Amy, record everything and prepare a message drone for Earth. Command, Nick, plot a course for the source of that transmission. Maximum speed." "Sir," Jake said carefully, "we don't have authorization for first contact operations. Earth Command will want us to return immediately and let the diplomats handle this." Torres looked at his first officer with steady eyes. "Commander, by the time we get back to Earth and the diplomats finish their meetings, these aliens might all be dead. We're out here, we're equipped for deep space operations, and someone is asking for help." Nick was already working on the navigation calculations. "Captain, at maximum speed, we can reach their location in approximately 18 hours. But I should warn you, we'll be completely on our own out there. No backup, no support, and no idea what we're flying into." The alien distress call continued to play through the ship's speakers. Lisa had managed to translate more of it, and the picture it painted was grim. Entire star systems were being consumed by something called the Vex. Billions of lives were being lost, and the aliens sending the message were running out of places to hide. Torres stood straight and looked around at his crew. These were good people, volunteers who had signed up to explore the unknown and represent humanity among the stars. He knew they would follow him anywhere, but he also knew he was asking them to risk everything on the word of aliens they had never met. "All hands, this is the captain," Torres announced over the ship's communication system. "We have received a distress call from an alien civilization under attack by an unknown enemy. I am ordering a course change to render assistance. This is not a drill. We are about to make first contact with alien life, and we're going into a combat situation. Anyone who wishes to register an objection should report to my ready room immediately." Jake waited for someone to object, but the bridge remained silent. Throughout the ship, crew members continued their duties with quiet determination. These were people who had left Earth knowing they might never return. They had signed up to explore the unknown, and now the unknown had found them. The Liberties. Engines increased power, and the ship began to turn toward the source of the alien transmission. Behind them, a message drone launched toward Earth, carrying news that would change human history forever. Ahead lay the darkness of interstellar. Space and whatever was waiting for them at the end of their journey. The UES Liberty dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of what had once been a thriving star system. Commander Jake Morrison stared at the main view screen in horror. Where the alien distress call had originated, he expected to find planets and space stations. Instead, he saw destruction on a scale that defied imagination. Captain Torres stood rigid beside his command chair. The entire bridge crew watched in stunned silence as their sensors revealed the truth. 3 planets in this system showed signs of recent civilization, but all 3 were now dark and lifeless. Massive scars covered their surfaces, as if something had drained away all their energy and left behind empty husks. Dr. Lisa Harper worked frantically at her science station, trying to make sense of the readings. Her instruments detected no life, signs on any of the planets, but something else caught her attention. Strange organic structures floated in space between the worlds, structures that her computer could not identify or classify. "Captain," Amy Foster called from her communications station, "I'm detecting multiple active signals. The distress call is still being broadcast, but it's coming from ships, not planets. There are survivors out there." Nick Coleman bent over his engineering console, studying the power signatures scattered throughout the system. What he saw made his blood run cold. "Sir, those organic structures are ships. They're alive, and they're massive. Each one is easily 10 times the size of the Liberty." Through the view screen, Jake could see movement in the distance. The alien bioships moved like predators, flowing through space with purpose and intelligence. Their surfaces rippled and shifted, covered in what looked like chitinous armor. Long tentacles extended from their hulls, reaching out to touch and drain energy from anything they encountered. "Those must be the Vex," Lisa whispered. She had been monitoring alien communications and piecing together fragments of their language. The species sending the distress call refers to them as devourers. They consume energy-based life forms. Torres made his decision quickly. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Nick, bring us to full power, but keep our energy signature as low as possible. I want to see what we're dealing with before they notice us." The bridge lights dimmed to red as the Liberty prepared for combat. Throughout the ship, crew members hurried to their assigned positions. These were people who had trained for deep space exploration, not warfare, but they adapted quickly to the new situation. Amy managed to isolate the source of the distress calls. "Captain, there are approximately 40 alien vessels trying to escape the system. They appear to be civilian ships, loaded with refugees. The Vex bioships are hunting them." Jake watched through the view screen as the drama unfolded before them. The alien refugee ships were beautiful, crystalline structures that moved through space like living art. Their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of transparent material that caught and reflected starlight in rainbow patterns. But the beauty was overshadowed by terror. As Jake watched, one of the Vex bioships caught up with a refugee vessel. Tentacles wrapped around the crystalline hull, and the beautiful ship began to dim and fade. Within moments, it went completely dark and began to drift lifeless through space. "They're draining them," Lisa said with growing understanding. "The Vex feed on energy. These aliens, the ones calling for help, they must be some kind of energy-based life form. The Vex are literally eating them alive." Nick had been studying the alien technology with growing excitement. "Captain, I think I know why they called. For help. Their ships are almost pure energy constructs. They have no kinetic weapons, no physical defenses. Against the Vex, they're completely helpless." Torres nodded grimly. "But we're not energy-based. We're carbon-based life forms from a high-gravity world. The question is, will their bioweapons even affect us?" The answer came sooner than expected. One of the Vex bioships had detected the Liberty and was moving toward them with frightening speed. Its tentacles writhed through space as it approached, clearly preparing to drain the human ship just as it had drained the aliens. "Incoming contact," Amy announced. "That thing is definitely heading straight for us." "All stop," Torres ordered. "Let it come. I want to see what happens when it tries to feed on us." Jake felt his heart racing as the massive bioship approached. The creature was even more terrifying up close. Its hull was covered in what looked like living tissue, pulsing with alien life. Strange openings along its sides revealed rows of what might have been teeth or energy collectors. The Vex bioship reached out with its tentacles and made contact with the Liberty's hull. Jake braced himself for the worst, expecting to feel the ship's power being drained away. Instead, nothing happened. The bioship's tentacles pressed against the human vessel's metal armor, but no energy transfer occurred. Nick was monitoring the ship's systems carefully. No power drain detected. Whatever they use to feed on those alien ships, it doesn't work on us. The Vex bioship seemed confused. Its tentacles probed along the Liberty's hull, searching for some way to tap into the ship's energy systems. When that failed, the creature began to change tactics. Sections of its hull opened to reveal what were clearly weapons, but instead of energy beams, they fired some kind of biological projectiles. The organic weapons struck the Liberty's shields and armor with tremendous force, but they were designed to disrupt energy-based systems. Against the human ship's metal hull and physical shields, they were far less effective than they should have been. "Return fire," Torres commanded. "All weapons, target that bioship's center mass." The Liberty's kinetic weapons opened fire, sending streams of metal projectiles into the Vex creature's living hull. The bioship recoiled in what might have been pain or surprise. Its weapons had been evolved to fight energy-based opponents, but it had no defense against simple metal bullets fired at high velocity. Nick watched his sensors in amazement. "Direct hits, Captain. That thing has never faced kinetic weapons before. We're actually hurting it." The Vex bioship tried to retreat, but the Liberty pursued. Jake coordinated the weapons fire, targeting what appeared to be vital organs along the creature's hull. Each hit caused the bioship to convulse and leak some kind of organic fluid into space. Within minutes, the massive predator was dead, drifting lifeless among the wreckage of its victims. The bridge crew stared at their view screen in stunned silence. They had just killed something that had been terrorizing an entire alien civilization, and they had done it almost easily. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "the alien refugee ships have stopped running. They're all turning toward us." Jake looked at the view screen and saw dozens of crystalline ships approaching the Liberty. Their hulls were glowing brighter now, pulsing with what might have been excitement or hope. After watching their people being systematically destroyed, they had just witnessed something impossible. "Captain," Lisa announced, "I'm receiving hundreds of transmissions from the alien ships. I can't translate most of it yet, but the emotional content is clear. They're thanking us." Torres stood up from his command chair and looked around at his crew. These people had just made history. They had achieved first contact with an alien species under the worst possible circumstances, and they had proven that humanity could stand against threats that other species could not handle. "Amy, open a channel to all human ships in this sector. Send them our coordinates and a full report on what we've found here. Tell them we need immediate assistance." Jake realized what the captain was planning. "Sir, are you requesting backup for a rescue operation?" Torres nodded. "Commander, there are still dozens of Vex bioships in this system, and thousands of alien civilians who need our help. We just proved that humans can fight these things. Now, we need to prove that we can save lives, too." The Liberty turned toward the nearest group of Vex bioships, preparing to continue the fight. Behind them, the alien refugee ships followed at a safe distance, their crystalline hulls glowing with something that might have been hope. The first human reinforcements arrived 12 hours after Captain Torres sent his emergency transmission. Commander Jake Morrison watched through the view screen as 3 more Earth ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The cargo vessel, UES Hammer, the mining ship UES Digger, and the passenger liner UES Voyager had all changed course when they received the Liberty's call for help. Dr. Lisa Harper had spent those 12 hours working with the alien refugees, slowly building a basic translation matrix. The crystalline beings called themselves the Zalani, and their terror of the Vex was absolute. For 3 months, the bioships had been systematically consuming every Zalani world they could find. Billions had already died, and the survivors had given up hope of rescue. Lieutenant Amy Foster established communications with the arriving human ships. Captain Sarah Wells of the Hammer was a former military officer who had volunteered for deep space cargo runs. Captain Pete Johnson of the Digger commanded a crew of asteroid miners and deep space workers. Captain Linda Brown of the Voyager had been carrying tourists on a luxury cruise when she received the distress call. Jake marveled at what he saw. None of these ships were designed for combat, but their crews had spent the journey here preparing for war. The Hammer had mounted mining lasers as weapons. The Digger carried explosives meant for asteroid work. Even the Voyager had been modified, with passenger lounges converted into medical bays for alien refugees. Chief Engineer Nick Coleman coordinated with his counterparts on the other ships. They shared technical data about the Vex bioships and worked together to develop new tactics. The alien predators were clearly not adapted to fight opponents who used kinetic weapons and metal armor instead of energy shields and crystal hulls. Captain Torres called a meeting of all ship commanders using holographic communication. The 4 captains appeared as shimmering images on the Liberty's bridge, each surrounded by their own bridge crews. Torres outlined the situation quickly and asked for volunteers to help with the rescue operation. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every human ship would stay and fight. Captain Wells spoke for all of them when she said that no one joined the Deep Space Fleet to run away from people who needed help. The Zalani refugees represented thousands of innocent lives, and humanity would not abandon them to the Vex. Lisa had made a breakthrough in understanding Zalani physiology. The crystalline beings were indeed energy-based life forms, but they were also far more advanced than humans in many ways. Their ships could travel faster than anything humanity had built, and their technology was based on principles that human science barely understood. But their advancement had also made them vulnerable. The Zalani had evolved beyond physical conflict millions of years ago. They had no weapons, no military, and no concept of warfare. When the Vex returned from wherever they had been hiding, the Zalani were completely defenseless. Amy coordinated the rescue operation using techniques learned from Earth's disaster response protocols. The human ships formed a protective screen around the Zalani refugee vessels, while teams of volunteers boarded the alien ships to provide medical assistance and technical support. Jake led one of the boarding teams onto a Zalani vessel called the Harmony of Stars. The alien ship's interior was unlike anything he had ever seen. Corridors made of living crystal pulsed with soft light, and the air itself seemed to sing with musical harmonies. The Zalani crew members were tall, graceful beings whose bodies appeared to be made of the same crystalline material as their ships. The first Zalani that Jake met was named Echo of Distant Thunder, though Lisa's translation program rendered the name as simply Echo. The alien being's form shifted and changed as different emotions played across its crystalline features. When Echo saw Jake and his human team, its entire body began to glow with what Jake assumed was relief and gratitude. Through Lisa's translation matrix, Echo explained the desperate situation. The Vex had appeared without warning 3 months ago, emerging from the galactic core where no intelligent species had ever ventured. They moved from system to system, consuming all energy-based life and leaving behind empty worlds. The Zalani had tried to negotiate, tried to understand, but the Vex seemed incapable of communication beyond their endless hunger. Nick worked with Zalani engineers to understand their technology. What he learned amazed him. The crystalline beings had mastered faster-than-light travel in ways that made human ships look primitive. But their entire technological base was built around energy manipulation. They had never needed to develop physical weapons or armor because they had never encountered an enemy that could not be reasoned with. The Vex were different. They were purely predatory, evolved over millions of years to hunt and consume energy-based life forms. Their bioships were living weapons designed for one purpose: finding and feeding on species like the Zalani. They had probably wiped out countless civilizations before disappearing back into the dark regions of space. But now humanity had arrived, and everything was changing. The Vex bioships that had seemed invincible to the Zalani were proving vulnerable to human weapons and tactics. The aliens had never encountered carbon-based life forms from a high-gravity death world like Earth. Human physiology and technology represented something completely outside their evolutionary experience. Captain Torres coordinated the next phase of the operation. The human ships would escort the Zalani refugees to safety while simultaneously hunting down the remaining Vex bioships in the system. It was dangerous work, but the human crews approached it with the same determination they had shown in Earth's most hostile environments. Jake returned to the Liberty to find more human ships arriving. Word of the crisis had spread throughout. Earth's deep space fleet and vessels were converging from across human-controlled space. Survey ships, cargo haulers, research vessels, and even a few military escorts were all changing course to join the rescue operation. Amy established a communication network that allowed all human ships to coordinate their efforts. The Zalani refugees watched in amazement as dozens of alien vessels worked together with a level of organization and purpose they had never seen before. Humanity was demonstrating something the crystalline beings had thought impossible, a species that grew stronger and more determined when faced with overwhelming odds. Lisa continued her work with the Zalani, learning more about their culture and history. The crystalline beings had once been the dominant species in this region of space, but they had chosen to focus on art, philosophy, and peaceful exploration rather than military expansion. Their advanced technology had allowed them to thrive for millions of years without ever needing to fight for survival. The Vex represented something the Zalani could not comprehend: pure, mindless destruction. The bioships were not evil in any recognizable sense. They were simply predators following their nature, consuming energy-based life because that was what they had evolved to do. But their arrival meant the end of Zalani civilization unless someone could stop them. Nick had been studying captured Vex biotechnology and made an important discovery. The alien predators were not just random monsters. They showed signs of intelligent design, as if they had been created or modified by some other species. Someone or something had turned them into the perfect weapons for hunting energy-based life forms. Captain Torres gathered his senior staff to discuss this new information. If the Vex were artificial weapons rather than natural predators, it meant there might be an intelligence behind their attacks. Somewhere in the galaxy, an unknown enemy was using the bioships to wage war against civilizations like the Zalani. Jake looked around at his fellow officers and saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. Humanity had stumbled into someone else's war, but they would not walk away from innocent people who needed their help. The Zalani had called out into the void for salvation, and Earth's children had answered that call. The rescue operation continued. As more Vex bioships were detected moving toward the system, the human fleet was growing larger every hour, but so was the enemy force approaching their position. Soon, they would face a battle that would determine whether the Zalani species survived or joined the countless other civilizations that had been consumed by the alien predators. Admiral Kate Richardson arrived with the largest human fleet ever assembled outside of Earth's solar system. Commander Jake Morrison watched from the Liberty's bridge as 37 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The UES Defiance led the group, followed by cargo haulers, mining vessels, passenger ships, and even a few luxury yachts whose wealthy owners had volunteered for the rescue mission. Dr. Lisa Harper had established full communication protocols with the Zalani refugees during the past day. The crystalline beings shared their star charts and revealed the true scope of the Vex invasion. Over 50 star systems had gone dark in the past 3 months, each one consumed by the bioships. Trillions of energy-based life forms had been devoured, leaving behind empty worlds and scattered survivors. Captain Torres transferred tactical command to Admiral Richardson while maintaining control of the rescue operations. The Admiral was a career military officer who had spent 20 years preparing Earth's defenses against unknown threats. She had never expected those threats to come from beings that fed on energy-based life forms, but she adapted quickly to the new situation. Lieutenant Amy Foster coordinated communications between all human vessels and the growing number of Zalani refugee ships. More crystalline vessels arrived every hour, fleeing from systems that were under attack by the Vex. Each ship brought stories of destruction and reports of bioship movements throughout the region. Chief Engineer Nick Coleman worked with teams from every human vessel to develop new weapons and tactics. The Vex bioships were vulnerable to kinetic weapons, but they were also learning. Recent encounters showed the alien predators adapting their tactics and developing new defenses against human attacks. Jake joined a planning session aboard the Defiance where Admiral Richardson outlined humanity's strategy. The human fleet would establish a defensive perimeter around the largest group of Zalani refugees while sending fast attack groups to hunt down individual Vex bioships. The goal was to buy time for the aliens to escape while systematically reducing the enemy's numbers. The first major battle began when a group of 12 Vex bioships attacked a convoy of Zalani civilian vessels. Captain Sarah Wells led the human response, taking the Hammer and 5 other ships directly into the enemy formation. The converted cargo vessel opened fire with mining lasers, while her escorts used everything from industrial cutters to improvised missile launchers. Lisa monitored the battle from the Liberty's science station, studying how the Vex bioships fought when faced with organized resistance. The alien predators showed clear intelligence, coordinating their attacks and attempting to isolate individual human ships. But their weapons and tactics were designed for hunting defenseless prey, not fighting determined opponents. The bioships tried to surround and overwhelm the human vessels, but Captain Wells had experience fighting pirates in the outer system. She used asteroid field tactics, forcing the aliens to fight in close quarters where their size became a disadvantage. The Hammer's mining lasers cut through bioship armor while her escorts targeted vital organs along the creatures' hulls. Nick had discovered that the Vex bioships were partially cybernetic, with mechanical components integrated into their living tissue. This made them more vulnerable to electromagnetic weapons than purely organic creatures would be. Several human ships began using their communication arrays as improvised electromagnetic pulse generators. Jake watched the tactical display as the battle evolved. The Vex bioships were dying, but they were also learning. Each engagement taught them something new about human capabilities and weaknesses. Admiral Richardson noted this pattern and began developing counter-strategies to prevent the aliens from adapting too quickly. Captain Pete Johnson of the Digger made a crucial discovery during his attack on a damaged bioship. The mining vessel's crew boarded the alien predator and found mechanical control systems buried deep within its living tissue. The Vex were not just evolved predators, as everyone had assumed. They were artificial weapons created by an unknown intelligence. Amy received this information and immediately shared it with all human ships. The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the galaxy, an advanced civilization was using the Vex bioships as weapons of mass destruction. The attack on the Zalani was not a random predatory behavior, but part of a deliberate campaign of genocide. Lisa worked frantically to extract more information from the bioship's control systems. What she found confirmed their worst fears. The Vex were programmed to seek out and destroy energy-based life forms throughout the galaxy. Their creators had sent them to eliminate entire categories of intelligent species, clearing vast regions of space for unknown purposes. Admiral Richardson called an emergency meeting of all ship commanders. The human fleet now faced a choice that would define their species' future. They could complete the rescue of the Zalani refugees and withdraw to Earth, or they could take the fight directly to the Vex and their mysterious creators. The debate was brief. Every human captain voted to continue the fight. Captain Linda Brown of the Voyager spoke for many when she said that humanity could not stand by while genocide was committed against innocent people. If the Vex were artificial weapons, then they could be stopped by destroying their control systems or finding their creators. Jake volunteered to lead a boarding mission against the largest Vex bioship in the system. The creature was easily 3 times the size of any human vessel, but intelligence gathered from previous battles suggested it might be a command ship controlling the other bioships in the area. Nick assembled a team of engineers and former Marines. for the boarding operation. They would use the Liberty's shuttle bay to launch a direct assault on the bioship's control center. The mission was extremely dangerous, but it offered the best chance of learning more about the Vex and their creators. The boarding team launched in 3 heavily armored shuttles, while the Liberty and her escorts provided covering fire. The Vex bioship fought back with tentacles and organic weapons, but the human shuttles were small and fast. They managed to penetrate the creature's hull and establish a beachhead inside its living corridors. Jake led his team through passages that pulsed with alien life. The bioship's interior was a nightmare of organic machinery and mechanical implants. Strange fluids dripped from the walls while mechanical systems hummed with unknown purposes. The team moved carefully, using motion sensors and thermal imaging to avoid the bioship's internal defenses. They found the control center buried deep within the creature's body. The chamber was filled with a mixture of organic neural tissue and advanced computer systems. Jake's team began downloading data while fighting off the bioship's immune system, which treated them as an infection to be eliminated. Lisa received the downloaded data and began immediate analysis. What she discovered changed everything they thought they knew about the Vex invasion. The bioships were not just weapons but scouts, sent ahead of a much larger force. Their creators were planning a massive invasion of this entire region of space, and the attacks on energy-based species were just the beginning. Admiral Richardson received Lisa's report as the boarding team fought their way back to their shuttles. The human fleet was no longer just rescuing refugees from a random attack. They had stumbled into the opening phase of an interstellar war that threatened every form of life in the galaxy. The Vex bioship began to convulse as Jake's team escaped in their shuttles. The creature's death throes revealed the location of other bioships throughout the system and confirmed that a much larger enemy force was approaching from the galactic core. Humanity had won this battle, but the real war was just beginning. Back aboard the Liberty, Jake looked at the tactical displays showing dozens of human ships scattered throughout the system. Each vessel represented ordinary people who had volunteered to fight an enemy they barely understood. They were cargo haulers and tourist ships, miners and explorers, but they had become humanity's first line of defense against an ancient evil that threatened all life in the galaxy. The final Vex assault began 3 days later when their massive command ship arrived at the edge of the system. Commander Jake Morrison stared at the tactical display in disbelief as sensors revealed the true size of the enemy vessel. The bioship was larger than a small moon, its living hull covered in weapons and spawning chambers that continuously released smaller attack vessels. Admiral Kate Richardson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, coordinating the defense of 47 human ships and over 300 Zalani refugee vessels. The human fleet had grown as more ships answered the call for help, but they were still vastly outnumbered by the swarm of bioships emerging from the command vessel. Dr. Lisa Harper worked frantically at her science station aboard the Liberty, analyzing the data they had recovered from the destroyed Vex bioships. She had discovered something crucial about the alien weapons. The massive command ship contained a central control system that coordinated all Vex operations in this region of space. If they could destroy it, the remaining bioships would lose their coordination and become vulnerable. Captain Torres received Admiral Richardson's battle plan and felt his heart sink. The only way to reach the command ship's control center was for a small force to penetrate its defenses and fight their way to the core. It was essentially a suicide mission, but it was the only chance they had to save the Zalani refugees and prevent the Vex from spreading to other systems. Lieutenant Amy Foster coordinated with the Zalani leaders, explaining humanity's plan through the translation matrix. The crystalline beings were amazed that the humans would risk everything to protect people they had only known for a few days. Echo of Distant Thunder, speaking for the Zalani Council, offered to help in any way possible. Chief Engineer Nick Coleman had been working around the clock to prepare the Liberty for the final assault. The ship's engines were pushed beyond safe limits. Her weapon systems had been modified with Zalani energy technology, and her hull was reinforced with salvaged materials from destroyed bioships. She was no longer the exploration vessel that had left Earth, but a weapon of war. Jake volunteered to lead the assault team that would penetrate the command ship. Admiral Richardson initially refused, saying she needed experienced officers alive for the evacuation, but Jake argued that he had the most experience fighting the Vex in close quarters. Eventually, she agreed to let him go. The attack began with a coordinated strike by the entire human fleet. Every ship opened fire simultaneously, targeting the smaller bioships that surrounded the command vessel. The space around the massive alien construct filled with explosions and debris as human kinetic weapons tore through living armor and mechanical implants. Captain Sarah Wells led a group of converted cargo vessels in a desperate charge against the command ship's defensive perimeter. The Hammer and her escorts drew the attention of dozens of bioships, sacrificing themselves to create an opening for the Liberty and her assault team. The Liberty raced through the gap, her modified engines screaming as Nick pushed them past every safety limit. Vex bioships converged on the small human vessel from all directions, but the ship's new Zalani-enhanced shields deflected their energy weapons while her kinetic guns returned devastating fire. Lisa guided them toward the command ship's most vulnerable point, a massive opening that served as a docking bay for smaller bioships. The Liberty's shuttle bay launched every small craft they had, creating confusion among the Vex defenders as human fighters weaved between the alien vessels. Jake led his boarding team through the command ship's living corridors, following the path that Lisa had mapped from the recovered data. The interior was even more nightmarish than the smaller bioships, with walls that pulsed with alien life and mechanical systems that seemed to watch their every move. They fought through waves of Vex bio-troops, creatures that were part machine and part living weapon. The aliens had never faced opponents who used explosive weapons and metal armor, and their bio-weapons were largely ineffective against human equipment. But the sheer number of defenders made progress slow and costly. Nick stayed aboard the Liberty, coordinating the ship's support for the boarding operation while keeping her engines ready for a quick escape. He watched the tactical display as more human ships were destroyed or damaged in the battle outside. The fleet was holding together, but they could not maintain this level of combat for much longer. Amy maintained communication with Admiral Richardson and the other human ships, providing updates on the boarding team's progress. The Admiral was fighting a brilliant defensive action, using the mobility of human vessels against the larger but slower Vex bioships. But the enemy's numbers were overwhelming, and several human vessels had already been lost. Jake's team reached the command ship's core after an hour of brutal fighting. The chamber was enormous, filled with a mixture of organic neural tissue and advanced computer systems that controlled the entire Vex fleet. Massive conduits carried data and energy throughout the ship, while alien machinery hummed with purposes that human science could barely comprehend. Lisa had provided detailed instructions for destroying the control center, but the task required placing explosives at precise locations throughout the chamber. Jake split his team into 3 groups, each targeting a different section of the alien command system. They worked quickly, knowing that Vex reinforcements would arrive at any moment. Explosives detonated simultaneously, sending shock waves through the command ship's living structure. The massive vessel convulsed as its control systems failed, and the bioships throughout the system suddenly lost their coordination. Many simply stopped moving, while others began attacking each other in confusion. Jake's team fought their way back to the Liberty as the command ship began to tear itself apart. The vessel's living tissue was rejecting the mechanical implants now that the control system was gone, and massive sections of the hull were breaking away. They reached their ship just as the entire structure began to collapse. The Liberty escaped from the dying command ship and rejoined the human fleet. Admiral Richardson coordinated the final phase of the battle, hunting down the confused and disorganized bioships while protecting the Zalani refugee vessels. Without their central command, The Vex were no longer an organized threat. Captain Torres stood on the Liberty's bridge as the last bioship was destroyed. The space around them was filled with debris and the scattered remains of alien technology, but the immediate threat was over. The Zalani refugees were safe, and the Vex invasion of this region had been stopped. Amy received a priority transmission from Earth Command, responding to the reports that had been sent during the battle. The news of humanity's first contact with alien life and their successful defense of an entire species had reached the highest levels of government. More ships were being sent to assist with the aftermath, along with diplomats and scientists to establish formal relations with the Zalani. Lisa worked with Zalani scientists to analyze the recovered Vex technology and learn more about the mysterious creators of the bioweapons. They discovered that the command ship had been programmed to report back to its makers, and its destruction would eventually alert them to humanity's existence. The galaxy was vast, but Earth had just announced its presence to an ancient enemy. Jake looked around at his fellow crew members and saw the same mixture of exhaustion and pride that he felt himself. They had answered a call for help from beings they had never met, fought an enemy they barely understood, and saved countless lives in the process. The Liberty and her crew had proven that humanity belonged among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Admiral Richardson addressed the combined human and Zalani fleets, announcing the establishment of a permanent alliance between their species. The Zalani Council offered humanity advanced technology and star charts showing safe passage through their territory. In return, human ships would help protect energy-based species from future Vex attacks. The rescue operation officially ended 2 weeks later, when the last Zalani refugees reached safety in their core systems. The human fleet began the long journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that they were no longer alone in the universe. They had found their place among the stars as the unlikely saviors who answered when others called for help.